When we think of stock markets, we imagine Wall Street in New York or London's financial district. But centuries before those existed, the very first stock market appeared in an unexpected place, the canals of Amsterdam. It was here, in 1602, that a bold new experiment changed the world of trade, finance, and investment forever. This is the story of the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, a company so powerful it became richer than some nations, and so innovative that it created the foundations of the modern financial system. At the dawn of the 1600s, the world was in the middle of a global race for trade. The Portuguese had pioneered the route to India a century earlier, dominating the spice trade. The Spanish, after conquering the Americas, used Manila and the Philippines as a hub for Asian goods flowing into Europe. Together, Spain and Portugal controlled most of the known world. The Dutch, however, had just declared independence from Spain after decades of war. They were a rising naval power, determined to break the Iberian monopoly and claim their share of the wealth coming from Asia. Dutch merchants had already been sending individual expeditions to Asia, but they faced enormous risks. Ships were costly, voyages were long, and losses from storms, pirates, and disease were frequent. Competition between Dutch companies also weakened their efforts. To solve this, the Dutch government merged several rival ventures into one single enterprise, the Verenigde Oost-Indische Company, or VOC, the United East India Company. Founded in 1602, it became the first multinational corporation in history. The VOC was granted a 21-year monopoly on trade with Asia, and something even more extraordinary, the power to act like a state. It could build forts, maintain armies, sign treaties, and even wage war, all under a corporate banner. To fund its missions, the VOC sold shares to the public. For the first time, ordinary citizens, not just kings and nobles, could invest in global trade. Merchants, craftsmen, bakers, even widows put their savings into VOC stock. The response was enormous. Over 6.5 million guilders were raised, the equivalent of billions today. This was the largest corporate fundraising the world had ever seen. Dividends soon flowed back to investors, sometimes in cash, but often in pepper, nutmeg, or cinnamon, luxuries worth more than their weight in silver. The VOC's first expeditions were perilous. Many sailors died from scurvy and disease. Some ships never returned, but those that did were loaded with cargo worth fortunes. In 1605, a VOC fleet returned with massive loads of spices, selling them in Europe for profits of 300%. Even one successful voyage could make investors rich. Confidence grew. Shares of the VOC began trading not just directly from the company, but between investors themselves, in a new market, the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, the first true stock exchange in the world. The VOC's success did not go unchallenged. Its fiercest competitor was the English East India Company, founded in 1600. The two giants fought bitterly for control of the spice trade, often clashing in Asian waters. The Portuguese were also still in the game, holding key ports from Goa to Malacca, and local kingdoms across India and Indonesia resisted European intrusion. The VOC, however, proved relentless. It established fortified trading posts, seized control of the Banda Islands, and eventually pushed both the Portuguese and the English aside in many regions. By the mid-1600s, it held a near monopoly on the spice trade. At its height, the VOC was more than just a company. It was an empire. It employed over 70,000 people, operated nearly 5,000 ships, and maintained its own private armies. Its market value soared beyond 78 million guilders. In modern terms, over $7 trillion. No company in history has ever come close. For decades, VOC stock was the most stable and profitable investment in Europe. This financial revolution transformed Amsterdam into the capital of global finance. Around the stock exchange, a new class of bankers, brokers, and traders emerged. They even invented new financial instruments, futures, options, and short selling, concepts still used today. But power breeds corruption. As the VOC expanded, so did its problems. Mismanagement, bloated bureaucracy, and corruption eroded its profits. Local governors enriched themselves while the company sank deeper into debt. Meanwhile, the English East India Company grew stronger, backed by Britain's rising naval power. The balance of global trade shifted. By the late 18th century, the once great VOC was a shadow of its former self. In 1799, after nearly 2 centuries of dominance, it was dissolved. Its debts and territories were taken over by the Dutch state. The Dutch East India Company began as a bold experiment, ordinary citizens pooling their money to share in risk and reward. It pioneered the stock market, created new financial tools, and fueled an empire that changed the world. The VOC is long gone, but every time stocks are traded, every time investors speculate, its legacy lives on. The world of modern finance began not in New York or London, but in Amsterdam, in the year 1602.